it's funny. I have folks that just they want to make sure that the fire is included, and sometimes we have rain, we have wind, it's like, "Oh, I don't know," or it's it's 100 degrees out in the summer. I'm like, you really want to finish the fire? It's probably not the best time to do it, but they feel the power of it, and to end on that note really just allows people to walk away feeling transformed, feeling different. I've gotten calls from people in the car going, I don't know what just happened, but I feel different. I feel and like I'm a different transformed person, and I'm going to do things differently in my life just by how I greet my family when I get home and how I'm going to treat my employees the next day. So
I welcome back to the podcast today, Dan Carusi. Our previous conversation generated a ton of positive comments, and people want more, which is always a good thing. He's a former chief learning officer leading sales and business transformations for multiple businesses. He's developed and implemented leadership and executive coaching programs that are recognized by Brandon Hall and CLO Magazine. He's the co-author of Change Management for Dummies and Talent Management for Dummies, which makes him the perfect guest for me. And also, for the past 6 years, he's been at the helm of Red Paint Consulting, leading a team specializing in performance improvement, change management, sales and business transformation, and talent development. And their truly unique approach integrates experiential and simulation-based learning with equine and adventure activities, and we'll hear more about that. They enable personal and professional growth for individuals and teams worldwide. Now, I try not to use the term thought leader too lightly, but it definitely applies to Dan Carusi in the area of leadership development. And so I'm just excited about continuing our conversation and going down more rabbit holes and exploring more fully. So, Dan, welcome. And maybe there are some gaps you'd like to fill in, particularly any new news or developments since we spoke the last time a while back.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me back. It's a pleasure to be here. If I recall from the first podcast, I think we could have gone on for 2 or 3 hours, but we had to end it.
At some point, someone has to say stop. Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Right. So the opportunity to pick it back up and continue is exciting. So thanks for having me. Anything new? I don't know if there's anything new. I just continue to learn. When you look at experiential and simulation-based training, I continue to do my own education on the power that horses have and the human-horse connection for team and leadership development and for our own personal growth. And then also weaving in the adventure outdoor piece to it. And, I think the one shift from the past is I talked a lot about adventure and equine, which is still there, but I'd like to maybe start using the language nature-based more than adventure-based. That we work with a lot of folks of just getting them outside and getting on a trail and going for a walk and then reflecting and having a conversation through there versus I'm going to tie you to a rope and put you on a rock face and then really push people out of their comfort zone. We can do that, but it's really the power of being outdoors. And that includes working with horses at the same time. So I think since we last talked, we really start to hone in on our message, and the program is just going to have the most impact positively for the participants, either as a team or as a leader.
So since we last talked, I've had the opportunity to speak with a lot of others in the leadership development space. And I will tell you this, one of the consistent themes from most of those conversations is everyone acknowledges that something's changing. And they'll acknowledge, parts of the change. Some will acknowledge that, oh man, business is moving faster, business is more complex, or people are impacted by information overwhelm, or people are impacted by cultural differences or generational differences or a variety of things. And it's been interesting to see that in many cases, um, these individuals start by acknowledging the world has changed. And what do we need to do about it? Well, now those same people, and I this is not meant to be critical, those same people, if their previous focus is on relationship building, they will say how the world has changed and relationship building is more important than ever. Or if they were about accountability, they'll say the world has changed and accountability is more important than ever. Or, and without even realizing it, they're sort of staying in their bubble of comfort, of expertise, and thinking that, hey, what I focus on is more important than ever. And I think they're right, but possibly insufficient. And what I loved about your approach, I think you said to me, everyone takes away something different from an equine experience or a nature experience or an adventure experience. And it can feel like we're sharing this. It's eight of us in a boat, or it's five of us riding horses. And yet it does end up being that personal experience for each individual, because I do think the nature of workers and employees is changing, the nature of work itself is changing, and leadership has to evolve. And it may be that, and I could be interpreting this wrong, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it may be that that time in nature, that time of reflection, gives someone the space to think about, how do I meet the moment? What do they need from me? What does my business need from me? I don't know. Does that prompt any thoughts?
It does, and I like where you're taking that thought, and so if I unpack that a little bit more, the personal piece to it, it is whether you're with horses or out in nature doing any type of activity, it is incredibly personal. Just what you see, what you smell, what you hear, what you're experiencing, it should touch all of us in some way, personally. We have those smells that you could be in the woods in a morning where it's very damp from overnight, and that's going to trigger some smells that may take you back to your childhood. I remember when I was camping with my family or with the scouts because of that certain smell. And so the programs that becomes a very personal, allows you to do your own self-awareness and discovery first, because you have to have your own self-discovery before you can help a peer or help a teammate or work better as a
Yeah.
leader or work stronger as a team. So it is a good transition into a very personal aspect of it, into then how do I leverage that to be a better teammate, team member, an employee, or leader. And you can't script it. I don't know how somebody's going to react in any one experience because it is very personal. I don't know what they're bringing with them to the activity or the event, and that could be just from a stress level or something that's in the workplace, or maybe there's bigger trauma in their lives that they're bringing with them that something could trigger it, and
Mhm.
they're going to have a much different experience than somebody else will. So we do talk very much about in advance. It is a personal experience and it's different for everyone. It makes it hard for me to market what we do because I can't put on a website, hey, this is what you're going to get out of a program. I can share what others have gotten out, but it's not a canned approach to it. And so many times I say, seeing is believing. You have to really experience it yourself to go, okay, I understand the power behind this type of program or programs that we put participants through.
I develop and deliver more traditional leadership programs, um, where you might have people in a room for a day, or virtually, for a couple of hours. And for a lot of the more recently developed topics, it's clear to me toward the end that I need to give the participants some time for deep reflection. And I've had numerous experiences where I'll build out something custom for the client, and I'll build in 30 or 40 minutes for deep reflection if it's a 1 day on-site program. And based on my assessment of the group and the content, I think they need that. I feel uncomfortable saying, go home and deeply reflect. Go home and open your workbook and write. I think they get more out of it, and if they have structured time to reflect and then to share their reflections to the degree that they're comfortable. But almost inevitably, clients look at that time and there are other things that they want to get done. And that 45 minutes of deep reflection time quickly gets scaled down to 30 and then 20. And
Mhm.
then it ends up being almost an afterthought. Hey, take 15 minutes and capture your deepest thoughts. But then there's no time to share. There's no real time for that deep reflection. And and I've been thinking about that in particular because I think in this world that we're in and moving toward, I've been using the phrase leadership 2030 lately, just trying to think about what will we need to be, each of us, when we get to 2030. What will our people need from us? And I think deep self-reflection is critical, but there just isn't. We don't give it time. We don't. So I'd love to hear from you, perhaps, like what have you seen or experienced in your nature-based events or your equine events in terms of what happens in terms of self-reflection and what comes out of that?
Yeah. So, I mean, first of all, the reflection piece is very much the definition of experiential learning. It's learning by doing with reflection. So that has to be built into everything we do. And I've done the classroom sessions and workshops, and I try to build reflection into that. And it literally turns into, okay, there's 3 minutes left. You do the one word. Okay, using one word each? What's your takeaway from the event? Everybody throws a word out, they run out the door, gone, right? And it's very hard to get a behavioral shift coming out of that workshop. And the goal of whether we're doing it in a classroom or we're doing it out in nature or with horses, and this goes back to your previous comment about being in nature, to be able to just step away, to be able to decompress, or to be able to share thoughts. It forces us into our present moment. I mean, we are in the present moment. We are not thinking about the future or the past. And so that allows time, if built in right, to reflect of what's happening at that moment. Not, hey, what I just learned now, I'm going to go do next week and the following week and apply it, because you've already lost it. You have to reflect
Yeah.
in the moment for what's transpiring. And so we'll do an activity, we'll reflect immediately after that activity before we start another one, and then we'll reflect, and then we'll do it. So it's an ongoing process of reflection built into the programs. And then when we get to the end of it, we do the final reflection. But we'll build an hour. We'll do it around a fireside. People become vulnerable, people share, but we'll do individual reflection first. Go off, find a quiet spot on the farm, quiet spot in the woods, write down your thoughts on a 3x5 card, bring it back. We're now going to share around the fire. Any negative thoughts you've written down on card, we're going to burn in that fire. And that's just going to be a cleansing, part of the reflection. And then you're going to walk away with your positive thoughts and attributes from your experiences. And so that series of reflections and activities allows it to carry forward beyond the event. Because as soon as they walk out, they're back in, hey, what time's my flight? What time's my
Yeah.
dinner? What time is whatever? You're back in the future, not in the present moment. So we really want to capitalize in that present moment and keep folks there grounded as long as possible before we lose that. You get back in the classroom, what happens? We have these. So we're checking email, we're checking messages, we can't be in the present moment because we're constantly thinking about what else I got to get done or what I have to do when I leave this training session. And that's what really works against the effectiveness of it.
Years ago, and it was something you said struck me, because years ago, I went through an experience where we were around a fire and it was a facilitated discussion. And we were asked to, toward the end of the discussion, uh, like you said, the exercise of writing down what you want to throw away and then tossing it into the fire. That felt so profound in that moment. And it was probably a 2 or 3 hour discussion, because like when you get into the flow, it time passes in some strange way where it just you lose track of time. You lose that sense of whatever else is going on in the world. And then, and I found that to be um, I'm going to use the word, I found it to be a profound thing that had an impact, not just on me, but on others. Fast forward to just about 6 months ago, I attended a program facilitated by someone else in a, a, a ballroom, in a meeting room in a hotel. And we went through a similar exercise, very different setup, very different environment, completely different facilitator. But we went through the motions, and it felt so shallow. It felt so we did the things, and we couldn't have a fire in the hotel. So
Mhm.
the facilitator told us, okay, here's a wastebasket. Crumple up your papers and toss them into the wastebasket, and we're gonna toss those away. It was technically the same exercise, and yet just not even close
Yeah.
to it. And so I'm not sure what the magic of actually being around the fire entails, but it's definitely there. I know it's there for me. I'm sure you experienced that.
Yeah, it for some reason it allows people to open up and be much more vulnerable than they ever would be. Now, I say that, but what they experience leading up to it has put them in a mindset where they learned about themselves, they've learned about others that they're participating with, they've showed themselves maybe at their point of being terrified and fearful and afraid or moments of weaknesses. And so by the time they reach the fire, they're much more in a state of mind to say, I'm okay around this group of people to share my thoughts. And that's when we see the vulnerability come out and people start to say that I didn't think I could do this, or without your help, or I've learned so much more about myself. And we've seen people move to tears, throughout it, just coming through it. I don't think you can create that in a ballroom space or in a meeting room space unless you can really break through the emotional parts to it. When we think of equine, a big part of it is emotional congruence that we learn from horses, and that's
Mhm.
having our actions match our emotions and our mindset. And if you can lead people through that to get to that point, then you can get that success at the around the fire. It's funny. I have folks that just they want to make sure that the fire is included, and sometimes we have rain, we have wind. It's like, oh, I don't know, or it's 100 degrees out in the summer. I'm like, you really
Uh-huh.
want to finish around the fire? It's probably not the best time to do it, but they feel the power of it, and to end on that note really just allows people to walk away feeling transformed, feeling different. I've gotten calls from people in the car going, I don't know what just happened, but I feel different. I feel and like I'm a different transformed person, and I'm going to do things differently in my life just by how I greet my family when I get home and how I'm going to treat my employees the next day. So I think recreating it without building up to it, because a big part of what we focus on is trust, communication, collaboration, the emotional congruence to it, that allows that vulnerability to come out at the fire. But we've had some powerful moments for sure.
If you take the experiences that you have with leaders in your programs and you extrapolate that to, let's just say, all humanity or the entire world, does that give you a, a point of view regarding what leaders are going through today? And let's set aside whether it's different today than it was 40 years ago. I happen to think that it is, but we don't really know for sure. But what does that tell you about the nature of what leaders broadly are going through? Because I hear you mention the word vulnerability again and again and again, and it seems that there's a lot going on inside that when you give them a chance, if they're willing to crack themselves open, there's a lot happening that goes so much deeper than my OKRs, my KPIs, my major, initiatives. There's this, I think we spend so much time as leaders in this world of work on moving the ball forward, moving various balls forward, or whatever metaphor you want to use, spinning plates, driving initiatives. When we're given an opportunity to pause and go deep, it feels like, oh, there's a lot going on that we should be paying more attention to. I don't know, and I don't want to overthink it, but what's your sense of what's happening with leaders today?
Yeah, there is a lot going on, and things are changing by the day, by the hour, right? Sometimes, and leaders have to not only keep up with it themselves, but they have to make sure they're leading their teams through it. And that I think is where we're running into the challenges of leadership today. Is we stop leading at some point, and we're all in a doing mode, right? That we're all side by side, just hey, we've got to do more with less. And this has been the theme since 2008, 2009, Great Recession. And so as a leader, I have to be side by side, getting the work done and doing my own work with my teams. And I'm not saying we're not hands on and we need to roll our sleeves up as leaders to do so, but we have to remember to lead. If we have to make sure that we are arming and equipping our teams to do the work so we can do the strategic leadership to be able to make sure we're removing barriers that are in their way from performing. We're understanding their goals and what they're working towards, and we're developing and growing them, that we're helping them through the change management and making sure we're crystallizing the vision and they're understanding the what and the why behind what's changing and why we're doing it. Those components of leading has to take place in order for the teams and the employees to do so. If it's just like, hey, I'm working just as hard as you as your leader, that isn't going to help that team get there. It's like take a sports team. The coach takes his headset off and he's on the field playing with the players. They're going to look at
Mm-hmm.
him going, Coach, what are you doing? You got to call the plays, right? You got to get back on the sidelines and call the plays. We're not calling the plays anymore. We're in the game. And so that's where I think we're missing on leadership. And I think the other part to it is this has been in leadership since I've started studying it, is there's still this perception that vulnerability is a weakness for leaders. That I can't share that in front of my employees. They're going to look at me like he's not strong. I
Mm-hmm.
can't work with him. And so we're like stoic and we put this facade up that, hey, I am so much stronger and things don't bother me like it bothers you. And we have to remind ourselves, and our employees know this, we're all humans. We cut, we bleed, we feel, we have things going on in our life that are not good all the time. I train and teach other leaders that when you see somebody that's short with you, snaps at you, you might want to not respond in the same way, but maybe ask them, what's wrong? Are you okay? Because there's probably something going on in their lives. And we carry that with us as well. And it's okay to share that with your teams and let them see that I'm struggling as much as you are. But as a high impact team, we can get through it together if we support each other and when we back each other up. When we go climbing, talk about the fire, right? The night before we climb, we share what we're scared of, what we think our weaknesses are. Maybe I'm not feeling 100% on this climb. That as a team, we want to know where we need to lean in to help somebody else to
Mm-hmm.
make sure the team is successful. We don't tie into a rope and start climbing going, geez, I hope Dan's okay today and he's going to be able to do his part. It's like, well, that's the wrong time to be asking that question, right? You need to find that out
Right.
before you leave the ground. We need to do that as leaders with our teams. And we're moving so fast, we don't. Or to check the box conversation. Hey, Dan, I hope you're doing well. Anything I need to know? Good, perfect. Okay, let's get to work. And we're going through the motions, Dan, I think more than we're actually, and that's what I
I
mean by we stop leading because we're checking the box on everything we do. And I'm not saying it's the leader's fault. It's just we're in a fast, ever changing paced environment right now where everybody's doing their best to get everything done. But at what sacrifice, are we doing that for? And then you add the layer of fear, uncertainty, and doubt that all our employees are carrying with them, that we carry as leaders as well. Man, we got to address that, and we've got to help our teams through. I call it the FUD factor, to navigate through that. So it's probably more than you wanted to get on that question, but that I don't. We have to fix that because if we continue down that path as leaders, it's just going to get worse for the leader. it's going to get worse for the employees. We're just going to see productivity drop, turnover increase, mental health coming in, and the stress levels and the burnout factors that's hitting all levels of the workforce. It's not sustainable or scalable long term.
Well, and I wrote it down when you said it. We stopped leading because we're all doing. And 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 it's not that leaders don't have things to do. Of course they have things to do. But and I think there's a generation of younger workers who are growing up in that environment, and maybe we're not intending it this way, but we're training them that that's the way it's supposed to be. That
Yeah.
leaders just drive. Leaders just move balls forward. They just check in on your KPIs. They just check in on your key initiatives. They're constantly checking in to make sure that your projects are on track. They might provide some critical feedback when something's not quite right. Um, and if we raise an entire generation with this sense that, oh, that's what leadership is,
Yeah.
where a leader doesn't have a weekly one-on-one with you to check in on you. How are you doing? How am I doing for you? Um, how is the organization doing for you? And what can we do to make things better for you? If those conversations never happen, um, eventually I think because there is a yearning for that. So eventually employees find another employer. They go elsewhere if they're not feeling seen, if they're not feeling heard, if they're not feeling like you care about me as an individual. And if I'm just to you a bundle of projects
Mm-hmm.
and all you care about is the green lights. Okay, green, 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 or we meet one on one and we focus in on the yellows and reds, and you just want to turn my yellows and reds green. Um, that does have an impact. It has an impact on the depth of your relationship, has an impact on, I think if you aren't looking under the surface of your employees, most likely you're not looking under the surface of yourself, and you're not acknowledging we are so much more complicated than just a set of deliverables.
Yeah.
And you wonder why at the end of the work day or week or quarter, you feel this vast sense of not really being into this, not really, why am I doing this? I need the paycheck. If you're wondering why aren't they more engaged? Well, why aren't you more engaged? Well, I am engaged. I'm because I'm moving the ball forward. But why aren't you more engaged with them? Why aren't you more connected to them? Well, who has the time? Because
Yeah.
again, we're all busy, busy, busy. Um, now, I don't know what all of the solutions are to that, but if we don't figure it out, it will break. I mean, at a certain point, you can only dance as fast as you can dance, and at a certain point, you're to continue the metaphor, your feet start bleeding, you can't dance any faster.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I,
But
it's and go ahead.
when I'm listening to you, and I've used the saying that the famous quote from a leader is, "We get work done through people," right? And I might have said this in the last
Mhm.
podcast. And what my philosophy and what I teach other leaders is just change one word. We get work done with people, and make we put the human element back into the workforce. Where with technology now, you send a text to employees for your check-ins, or you're virtual, you're using AI, you're using all these things, and we're just each day losing more and more of the human element. And so the ability to make that connection back from a leader to a team, and the team becoming one, becoming a high impact team where you have the trust and the relationship that allows that vulnerability. But the one thing we're missing, Dan, right now is trust. Employees don't trust their leaders. Leaders
Yeah.
don't trust their companies. And so you're asking people to do things when they're looking at you going, yeah, not so sure you got my back on this, and so we come up with great, quotes out there saying business is personal and this is now as a leader and all that. Nobody believes that, and so when we take people out of that environment where you have no choice but to build that trust with somebody because you're relying on them to paddle in front of you in the boat, in the same boat, or belay you when you're climbing, or the trust you build between a 1,200-pound horse, that's when titles go away, trust is developed, you start helping each other more. Now everybody's got their own agendas. They're all working towards their own things, either as an individual contributor or as a leader. But you talk to an individual contributor on the team, they're not that concerned that the team is successful. They're concerned about, what am I getting out of this? Am I going to get my promotion? Am I going to get my merit increase? Am I going to get new job titles, whatever that may
Mhm.
be? They're not looking at the overall success of a team. And so that's where, if we push people into these high impact teams with people, leaders leading differently, with the human element to it, oh my gosh, get out of the way. The performance is going to skyrocket. They're going to accelerate. And that's a lot of what we work with teams and leaders to be transforming to. You go back to Red Paint, how we were founded as the name of our firm was canoeing in Canada on Red Paint Lake with the Boy Scouts. And you had adult leaders and you had the boys, they were teenagers. Adults were in charge. You had one boy that was in charge of the scouts, and we gave orders. And long story short, we had a difficult portage where we were carrying canoes and gear for a mile and a half that took 5 hours. About halfway through it, we came together as a team. It didn't matter who was an adult, who was a scout, what title was out there. We found a way to help each other and do the second half of it and get it done. And if we can do that in those environments, why can't we do that in the workplace? Why can't we do that with leaders and teams? We can replicate that. We just have to get people's eyes wide open as leaders to say, I have to do things differently. We can't keep leading the way we've always had, because we can see it's not working. It's not sustainable.
So one thing of the things I've noticed that speaks to exactly what you're describing is, okay, there's the new initiatives related to AI. Lots of different AI tools, lots of different AI possibilities. But the way AI is being introduced to teams and organizations, the way it's being leveraged, I'm not saying it's always this way, but it seems kind of shallow. Where, okay, you got this new set of great tools, they can make you more productive. So what's our directive as a leadership team? Well, first we want you to access these tools. We want you to learn these tools. Maybe we'll help you learn these tools, and we want you to be more productive. So start using these tools, and we should see an improvement in productivity. If you're a graphic designer, you should be able to work faster. If you're a writer, you should be able to work faster. If you're a coder, you should be able to work faster. If you just about anything, you should be able to leverage AI and do it faster. So go forth with no sense of how is this going to impact the pride you take in the work. Like
Yeah.
if you're a coder and you used to spend, you know, mornings, evenings, nights obsessing over your code, and now a lot of that can be generated in a third of the time or less, and you just do a quick scan to confirm that the code works. Do you really take pride in that? Maybe you do. Maybe you do. Maybe not quite as much, but also you don't internally know that code the way you know your own code.
Yeah.
So if something does go wrong, who's the subject matter expert to fix the code? I had one young gentleman say, well, I'm going to use AI to fix it. Well, if AI is creating it and AI is fixing it at some point, okay, then who's proud of it? And I know that that doesn't have to be the ultimate
Yeah.
answer for everything, but I don't know that we really thought through the human element of um, leveraging AI. And if I, as a leader, have decided, well, AI is going to make everyone at least 30% more productive. Well, does that mean then I need 30% fewer humans? Um, am I deciding, okay, all of that new productivity, that's mine. That like all that 30%, you give that to the business. Or do we consciously say, give half to the business, like produce more in the same amount of time,
Yeah.
but also take some of that time for yourself? Maybe create a slightly better human life along with that. And I don't know that that's absolutely the right answer, but I just don't know that we've thought through the human elements of how do we leverage AI? How do we make sure that the team feels comfortable. I have one client organization where when I speak to the leaders have clearly gotten the message. AI is going to improve productivity by a certain percentage. We're going to see these metrics move. When I talk to the employees on the ground, the employees will say, it's not as easy as they think it is. It doesn't actually produce what they think it produces. I have to still I spend maybe not quite as much time, but the time savings are not 30%. They're maybe 10% because I spend a lot of time correcting, adjusting, educating the AI. Um, and I think that leaders who don't take the time to learn it themselves, learn the tools themselves at a very practical level, they just end up flying blind.
Yeah.
Does AI come up in conversations as you are with folks, discussing their business in these nature experiences? Does AI ever come up as something for teams to discuss?
It comes up. Well, first of all, that if a company and leaders are gonna, if their growth strategy is all through AI, I would consult differently with them because I don't think that's gonna give the growth for their investors and their shareholders on it. And the human element to it, what you said, you think about it. We're building teams and hiring talent on AI for the most part. That applicants are using AI to write their resumes, and hiring managers are using AIs to vet out the resumes. So it's AI talking to AI, and nobody's
They're
actually
using
looking
AI
at
to create the questions. They're using AI. I'm gonna actually, let's back up even further. They're using AI to generate a job description. So I've had real world situations where the hiring manager is disconnected from HR recruiting. The hiring manager gives HR recruiting kind of here's a sketch of what I'm looking for. HR takes that and uses AI to create a job description. They post that job description. People use AI to create their resumes and response to the job description and so AI is trying to make a perfect match,
Yeah.
for that job description. Then AI is used for generating questions that we ask, and then we take lots of notes. I've even seen two examples where the companies they record the interviews, they use Gemini to record the interviews, and then they take the interview notes from multiple candidates and they ask AI assess which candidate is the closest fit for
Yeah.
the job based upon the interviews. That if you really get your head around how AI is impacting every element of this, it's a little, I don't want to say scary, but it makes you wonder, well, who's actually thinking? Who's doing the thinking? And then you get surprised when you hire someone and the fit isn't as great as you thought it would be for the
Yeah.
real job in the real world.
Yeah, it's scary. And now you asked the question about, do I see it in the nature programs and the equine programs? So, I've had participants, especially with horses, that they're using AI prior to coming in to learn how to build trust with a horse and to do the program. The problem is the horses don't use AI, and they're
Right.
going to be different every day, and they're going to respond based on how you show up. So it doesn't work,
Mhm.
and we talk about that, saying, what was your intent to be able to use technology? Because AI, and I had a very spirited conversation with another consultant that was taking the position that you can use AI to build trust. And I'm like, you cannot use AI to build trust. There's nothing more a human factor than building trust between two people or two living beings. And AI can't do that. And so if that is your strategy with your team, like how do I build trust with Dan? I'm gonna go look that up. If I do these things, it's gonna do it. It's not gonna work, right? So um, I've had people on their phones trying to figure out how to do a task, and they're going under the phone. So we take technology away. It's like, nope, you
Mhm.
can't use your phones for the activities and do those things because it's becoming a crutch on, hey, as long as I have this, I can just put it in the search, and whatever agent I'm using, it's going to give me my answers. But it's going to miss out on those key human elements you need to be able to be a stronger team, be a stronger leader, and work with people. And it's scary when we completely are moving towards losing that human element, but yet expecting those same communication, collaboration, cross-functional work, trust, vulnerability, all those elements to build in, and we're thinking technology is the tool to get us there. I'm a little concerned with that as a strategy as well. I think AI is great for building efficiencies. We all use it. There's things I use it. But how would I look to people that if I wrote a thought leadership article on authentic leadership and I had AI write it for me? That doesn't make me an authentic leader, does it? Right? Because I'm not writing my own thoughts and putting it on paper or on slides to share with an audience. I'm using someone else's combination of other people's thoughts across the world being scraped into one document. That isn't representing me and my thoughts and my position. So
And
we need to find that balance for sure.
what if it actually produced something that was perfect and unrecognizably perfect? Now, I think the reality is most of us are learning how to recognize that sort of AI developed blandness. Like you read something and it's perfectly correct. Like there's not it's good, it's great, maybe even, but it just feels there's that sterility that you sometimes get, or most of the time get, and we are learning to recognize it. But even let's imagine someone gets really good at leveraging AI tools to produce documents that then they purport to be their own writing. Even if you get away with it, how does that hurt you though? Because what you're really doing is using AI to do the hard thinking. It's hard to think about and then write about topics related to leadership. To actually discern, what am I seeing, what's working, what's not working, and then add the skill layer of how do I express that to others in a way that grabs them and keeps them and helps them learn from it. If you suddenly have an AI tool or series of tools that are doing all of that hard work for you, it's you
Yeah.
used sports as a metaphor. You can't have someone else do exercise for you. You can't say, "Hey, I need to do 20 push-ups a day. Could you go do those for me?" You have to do your own push-ups. And I
Yeah.
think the brain is that as a similar kind of muscle. You have to do your own hard thinking, or your brain will atrophy. It'll simply get smaller, and you will not be the smart person that you are today. At least that's my theory.
So look, we took a group of young leaders on a 2.5 day. It was an immersive camping program just south of Washington D.C. And we cowboy camp. We made them sleep under the stars on the ground. We made them rough it a little bit, but we did a orienteering session where myself and another facilitator, he's a former Navy SEAL, we would teach them how to use a compass, how to use maps, right? How to do proper orienteering. There's a course set up in the woods, and put them in teams and go figure it out. And these were a lot of engineers and very startup technology companies, so a lot of software developers, engineers in it, and they were kind of lost. Like, well, wait a minute, I have no other sources to be able to get the information other than a compass and a map and each other, right? And now go figure it out. And the feedback, and they struggled, and eventually they started firing their way through, but it forced them to think, to use their brain, to listen to what we were teaching them, and then to work together as a team.
Yeah.
That's the advantage of that type of program, because there are no crutches there to help them through that activity other than helping each other and using their brains and what they were taught and learned in a moment. And if they didn't pay attention to what we were saying, you're once you leave, we're not going to be out there to give you advice and guidance, to the point that where we taught them was not the starting point for the course, but nobody asked that question. So they all started from where we were teaching it, not reading the map to realize they're in the wrong place where they're orienteering
Mhm.
from. It took them about an hour before they came back on. We're not in the right place, are we? I'm like, nope. So all your markers are thrown off but that's the type of thing that without technology is so beneficial. Now go back and into the workplace, take what you learn, but apply that with the technology. I'm not saying don't embrace AI, and of course not, right? There's a huge advantage to that technology, and that's the future. But it's how do you balance between AI and EQ, right? Take the both sides of it, put it together, work as a team. You're going to get a different outcome versus relying all on one. Or you can't live without technology, so you can't erase that one, and you can't live without the human skills and the emotional skills, right? So find that balance, and you'll see much greater success for sure. And leaders have to embrace that, definitely.
And I am a big user of AI. In fact, I have a web browser with 5 tabs with 5 different AI tools: Claude, ChatGPT, Perplexity, and a few others. And I keep it in the upper left-hand corner of my screen. It's minimized throughout the day, but if a specific issue or challenge or something arises where I can use it as a tool, it's right there. I open it up and I use it as a tool. With that said, I I also spend at least as much energy working with my team trying to help them drive deeper. I had a young person who came to me with a series of documents that she had written that as part of her task. And when I began, and the documents were perfectly fine, but you could just tell they were AI engineered. And I began questioning her about the content because part of her job is to be a subject matter expert, not simply, I mean, we could hire almost anybody to just type into AI. Her
Yeah,
job is to be a subject matter expert in particular arenas and to be able to have client facing interaction. So she's going to post online about areas where she purports to be the subject matter expert. So I should be able to have an intelligent conversation with her about all of this. It should be internalized. And what was very clear was that it wasn't internalized. It wasn't. We couldn't talk about it. And so how then there becomes, a coaching opportunity. How do you gently guide someone toward that vision of being a subject matter expert who leverages AI as a scalpel, as an occasional scalpel to refine things? Um, I think this is learning that we're all going through, and the best of our employees, the most productive of our employees, are going to learn the skills of using it as a scalpel, not as a chainsaw to, just, cut everything and build out something completely. Um, and I didn't necessarily mean to take us down this AI rabbit hole. I just think it's right now it's on the forefront of what's somewhat dehumanizing our work.
yeah,
Leaders aren't sure how. Leaders are just focused on productivity, which is, of course, that's a great thing. It is a great thing. Um, but if you can't recognize how it's causing paranoia with some of your employees, I felt refreshed. I was talking to a creative director last week, and I wanted to talk to him about how AI was impacting his work, his career, his people, and he said, "We don't worry about it." Now, I'm not saying his point of view is common, but that's why it was refreshing. He said, "Look, it's AI is going to be what AI is. It's
mhm,
these are tools that we use, but you can't create art that resonates with humans just leveraging AI. It,
yeah,
because people recognize it. They and there's a human yearning for human work, for human messaging. And he said, so it's going to be what it's going to be. We're going to leverage the AI. He said there are some AI tools for graphic design that I am just a huge fan of that I use all the time, but they don't replace that part of my brain that creates ideas, that understands what drives people.
yeah,
He had truly, I mean, he was in a place where he had truly made AI a benefit for himself and his people, but he didn't expect it to do too much. He didn't expect it to replace his creativity, so to speak.
yeah.
Um, so when you've described some of these experiences, um, what have you learned about the nature of human leadership as you take all of these experiences that you've had over the last 6 years with the various workshops? um, have they have they drawn you to some conclusions about the nature of human leadership?
When you take all of us out of our comfort zone, right? And put us when we're facing something that either we're uncomfortable with or we're terrified of or we've never done before or whatever it may be, our true selves come out. We really start to see what the true human nature of that group of people is, or as leaders. And then you force them to have to figure it out where there's no help coming other than working together to figure that out. You start to learn that people still have the ability to learn, to grow, no matter where they are and what title they've had, and how much experience they've had. They come together and they figure it out. 9 out of 10 times, the things that we put, activities we put the groups through, they find a way to get it done because there's no alternative to it, right? We don't let them off the hook and they have to figure it out. And it really is a good reminder when you look at humans and leaders that give them the ability, create the environment where they have to figure it out. Don't micromanage it for them and do it for them. Don't give them all the directions and guidance. We purposely leave out a lot of the directions so they have to ask questions or they have to figure it out or they have to work together. But I just seen the ability for people to grow and to people to change is still there. I think that's just in our nature. Although we say it's hard for people to change, if you create the right environments, they will change. If you have to create an environment that's going to force that change, it will. I remember a group I did recently. We did a day on the river paddling and then a day on the farm. It was a river to farm program. And again, it's unscripted. And I was in the back of the boat. We hit a hole and I bounced out of the back of the boat, right? And I'm swimming. Our guide on the back of the boat is rescuing me. He pulls me back in. I'm soaking wet. The team, they had no idea I left the boat. So they finally, somebody turned around and said, "Dan, why are you wet?" I'm like, "I was in the river." They're like, "Well, we had no idea." So I asked them, I'm like, "Well, does this happen to you in the workplace?" And they're like, "Well, yeah, actually, if someone doesn't show up, we don't even notice and we just continue with our meeting." And so those type of activities put them in a situation where, okay, switch positions in the boat and see what happens and see if you fall out. But how are you going to learn from that and grow? And now I hear back from this team that, hey, Joe's not on the call. Call Joe to see where he is. He accepted the call. And so they can change and they can grow in that moment. It's in all of us. But when we're stuck in the day-to-day grind, we check the box for our training. We go through the basic modules to say we did it. We're not getting the leadership we need. Nobody's growing. Nobody's tapping into what is in us, all of us to do, which is continue to grow and develop and change and adapt. So I am hopeful for humans that, the more that we can tap into that, we can solve problems and we can continue to grow and we can continue to be innovative and creative and create the great successes in business and arts and music and everywhere else that we see out there that we all have the ability and capability to do. So that's my quick answer and based on my observations. But I'm blown away when I see, someone that comes in to work with horses that's been a leader for 20, 25 years. It says, I've had all the leadership training. I know what kind of leader I'm at. I'm just here to go through the process. And they're the ones that are impacted the most. They're the ones that just walk away going, I had no idea that that's how I show up every day to my teams. I had no idea that I learned this about myself from a horse, and I'm going to go change and make a big change in my life. I'm going to treat my family differently. I'm going to be more active in my church. I'm going to treat my employees differently because of you're away from the boardroom. You're out here with interacting with another living being that's going to give you non-judgmental real-time feedback. And they're not going to speak to you. They're going to do it through nonverbal communication as they do in a herd. And you're going to learn real fast that I've got to do things differently in my life. And so that's the ability to help influence that change and behavioral shift that we want to see in teams and leaders.
Do you ever have people who have gotten used to having support, have gotten used to having people do things for them, and whether it's conscious or not, the nature of their way of showing up is, okay, I'm given a task or a challenge. Let me assign various roles so that everything gets done. And I am more of an orchestrator, not really a doer. Um, does your experience ever kind of reveal the downside of that, where if you're just orchestrating and you're not doing something, if you're not creating something, um, you can be in a world of hurt when the time suddenly comes where we need you to actually do. Does that ever happen?
It does. We'll have folks, and first of all, the activities are activity by choice, so we don't force it. And if somebody's going to
Okay.
sit it out, they're going to sit it out. But we'll facilitate that part of it. We'll talk about it. We'll have one-on-one coaching with that person, saying, "Hey, what's holding you back from doing this activity? Is it just they used to someone else doing it for them as a leader or a teammate? Maybe we'll try to flush that out. Sometimes the teams will call out that person and say, you need to, if we're going to be a high performing, high impact team, you need to participate, or we'll change the activities and the roles that creates the need for everybody to participate in some form or fashion. So everybody's assigned a task. When we did the fully immersion program in the woods, people were assigned daily tasks. One was the medic, one was the navigator, one was the chef, one was firewood, whatever it may be. And so everybody had to contribute in some form, with the teaching that as you go back into the workplace, you all have to contribute for a team to be successful and high performing. You can't sit on the sidelines and let everybody else do the work. So that does become part of the program. The challenge, Dan, is not knowing who's going to show up and who's going to do what and what the event's going to do. Is
Yeah.
the success of the programs really is our ability to be in the present moment, to observe and to facilitate real time, which is why we do debriefs after every activity. We might miss something if we wait until the end of the program and say, "Oh, Dan, I noticed 5 hours ago you didn't participate or you didn't do your share of that activity." It'll be lost. So we'll call it out as real time as possible, as long as we see it, because we have to be able to observe it, see it, and then facilitate it. There's a saying in the type of work we do: it's not about the activity, it's about the facilitation. So whether I put you on a rock face, hiking on a trail, in the river, switch the activity, we're going to start to see the same behaviors and things come out of it that we can facilitate too, and make sure it becomes a teaching moment for sure.
What I love about every one of these experiences that you've described is we, of course, we talk about taking people out of their comfort zone, but I think even more so, it's taking people out of what I might call their bubble zone, where, every one of us creates a bit of a bubble or persona in the workplace. I dress a certain way, I act a certain way, I do certain things. I have my comforting blanket of expertise that I surround myself with. So you expect things of me in a certain way, and that we all have it. We all have a certain bubble and that controls how others perceive us. Leaders in particular have a certain bubble around them, so people know what news they can bring to a leader, what news they should not bring to a leader unless they will suffer the wrath for bringing that bad news. Um, and I think that bubble is very protective. Like we protect ourselves with our individual bubbles. You take a team and you throw them into a unique environment. They're dressed differently than they would normally be dressed. They're put in roles differently. And I think you said this to me on the last call. You don't necessarily know what the hierarchy is. You don't know what the structure is. So you don't know who you should bow down to. You just know that you're all a team. And then I think it's got to be fascinating to see how the facilitator interacts with the team. And then even more so, the horses. You had said this on the last time. The horses don't know who's the CEO who drives a Bugatti and who's the intern who drives a Subaru Outback. They just they just know there are humans, and so I love the idea of stripping those bubbles away for a while and letting people learn to relate to each other in a very different way. Um,
Yeah, it's funny. We did an equine event, and one of the activities I do is trying to get each team, small groups of 2 or 3 people, to move a horse and move the horse without using a halter, touching the horse. They have to use motion and
Mhm.
energy to move a horse. And to your point, they don't know, the horse doesn't know who's the CEO and who's not. And, many times you'll see in this one instance, the CEO is literally dancing around the horse, trying to get the horse to move, and his whole team is watching, and the horse is not moving. And horse is just looking at him like, what are you doing? And to your point though, the horse is not saying, oh, he's a CEO, I should probably start moving. No,
Yeah.
he's just going to react to what is coming at him. And so you see people, regardless of title, participating in different ways they would never do in the workplace. They would never step up and start dancing around the boardroom table trying to
Mhm.
do an activity. But out here, they're motivated to do so, and they do let their guard down, and they do work as a team. And the horses, again, they're going to respond based on what energy you bring, positive or negative. They're going to mirror what you're doing and bring that back. And that is so powerful for a CEO and for the team to see the CEO doing that. They change their point of view of that CEO, going, oh, wow, he's actually
Yeah.
struggling like we are to move this horse. He doesn't have all the answers. That's okay. We're going to figure it out as a team. And there's some of those wonderful unscripted learning moments that comes from it.
So I've got to ask, just because I'm curious about this, does anybody ever really struggle? Like hey, they're just either not getting it, or the vulnerability, or whatever else comes along with the experience just is too much for them, where they're just not ready to be open in that way? Does that ever happen?
It does. Not everybody all the time is going to open up, throughout the events and around the fire. We don't force them to do it.
Yeah.
Majority do. Usually the ones that are hesitant will start once others start sharing, then they might do so. But no, we have some that, we'll say to them, it's like, if you're not comfortable, that's fine, but please reflect on what you learned and take with you to do so, or do so with a family member or
Mhm.
someone else. Um, they'll do that. But there's times that emotionally people get overwhelmed. It was far more than what they anticipated. Horses, everybody thinks horses are cute and wonderful until they're standing next to a 1,200-pound animal and realize this thing's scary, right? And intimidating. So we might have times where somebody won't step into the arena with the horse. That's okay. We'll give them a different role on
Mhm.
how to observe. But what we try to do is meet everybody where they are. So I'll do a lot of work up front to understand what their appetite for being out of their comfort zone is, what that really means, what they're willing to do and not to do, and then design the program to meet them where they are, where it still challenges them. It gives us the results, but it may not be as extreme. Or, if I know somebody's really going to be triggered emotionally, I may not put them with horses.
Yeah.
If people have previous trauma in their lives, horses will trigger that trauma. And, we may not want that to happen unless we have the right staff on place to address that. So we'll do our best, upfront on the discovery to make sure we're designing the right program. But again, we'll meet you where you're at, and we're not going to force it. And we'll allow your team potentially and the horses to convince you to open up and move forward with it.
It is, I don't know exactly what it says about us, but I know it says something when we know that certain humans react very dramatically to equine therapy. Certain humans react dramatically to dolphin therapy, to dog therapy, to like the presence of particular animals for particular humans. It's more than just, oh, it's a nice petting experience. There's something viscerally that does happen. And again, I don't know what it says about us, but I know it says more than nothing about how we're wired as humans.
The power of healing from nature, from horses, from dolphins, or dogs, whatever it may be, because we have dogs here as well, and we can't live without them. It is hard to explain. It's the activities themselves. It does, think about from therapeutic. It puts people in the present moment. So for that period of time, whatever pain they're experiencing goes away because they are not
Mhm.
reliving whatever PTS they might have had or other trauma in their lives. They're singly focused on grooming that horse or spending time with that animal so the pain goes away. And then they make that incredible connection with another living being that isn't judging them, that has no
Yeah.
opinion about them, that is not sitting there going, oh my gosh, you did this in your life, or this is happening. You're bringing, they don't care, right? They are in the present moment with you. And that is what is so incredibly powerful for the participant to experience that. And, it just, that's when the emotional congruence comes in, when you are aligning your emotions and your actions with that of the living being that you're working with. It's some pretty powerful moments.
So what you're speaking of, I think, is going to become more and more important for leaders because it just seems broadly like we're coming out of an age of, um, I'll call it mechanistic leadership, might be militaristic, might be mechanistic, but it's leadership that drives change, that drives compliance, that drives performance. And I think there's a transition toward leadership that draws out from people, still productivity, still performance, but does it in a different way. And I wish I had it more fully formed in my own mind so I could verbalize it. But I think there's just, if I think about the leaders of 2030, the ideal leaders, I'm not sure if they're going to be leading more people because we have, you know fewer leaders for more employees, or they're going to be leading less people or fewer people. I don't know if teams are going to be bigger or smaller, but I think people are going to need more from leaders, and leaders are going to have to be more for those people. And how we define what that more is, like what you're speaking to, isn't the whole answer, but it's a part of the answer. Like understanding people at a deeper level, because then you have a sense of what they need. You have a sense of how do I draw out the best from them, or how do I reposition them in a different role or a different situation that will draw out the best from them. But that takes deeper thinking. It takes a different kind of leadership. And I think that's part of the agitation we're going through right now is we have people who were very successful with mechanistic leadership, very successful as driver leadership. And we have even people today who are very successful as driver leaders, but it's producing less and less of an impact.
Yeah.
I have a gentleman I was talking to last week who he definitely grew up in that driver mentality, and he's determined the key to success today and in the future is to refuse to work with non-winners. That's the way he described it. And basically he's going to narrow his field of focus down to, I'm only going to hire winners, I'm only going to work with winners, and if they can't be winners, I'm going to set them aside. And he's just not going to let go of that mechanistic driving mentality. But sometimes the universe has a way of teaching us lessons that we can't see for ourselves.
The interesting thing in those comments, and you think about more of heart-led and empathetic leadership, approaches in the world we are today. And I teach that, and I've had leaders tell me, it's like, I can't be empathetic or I can't be heart-led because sometimes you just have to fire people and you have to deliver results and you have to do all that. And yes, you do as a leader. And by no means I'm saying you don't make the hard decisions. But my response to him was, yes, you have to fire somebody, but it's not about firing them. It's about how you do it. You could
Yeah.
be empathetic and you could be with a heart-led approach to it, or you could be a jerk, right, and be cold and callous to it. And that's a choice as a leader. And look, I was taught as a leader, when you terminate somebody, you say as little as possible so it doesn't come back and to HR, and you read off a script, and you realize how callous and cold that is when you're basically turning somebody's life upside down, when you could be a little more empathetic to say, hey, we're going to offer you some, resume reviews and a recruiter and some help and extend your benefits and make it as a smooth exit as possible. That's being a little more heart-led and empathetic. And so we have to find that approach to it versus, I just read an article that was promoting micromanagement to still be okay. like micromanaging is okay, especially in sales, because that's accountability. I'm like, micromanaging is not accountability. You can't combine
Right.
those two things. That's right. And that mindset is still out there, that we're justifying those old behaviors as leaders, but we see what it does to employees, and it's just not working. And going back to the horses, when those leaders show up that are very, set in their ways and very strong-minded, maybe you could even call somewhat toxic, let's see how that horse responds to them. Not good, because that they're going to get feedback. That's the
And
same way their employees are reacting to them as well,
I
which is
don't I
really,
don't know horses. I mean, I've been around horses a bit, but I have seen what happens when a horse just sets its shoulders in. Like you think you're going to move me, or you think you whatever you're thinking. There's that physicality that comes up, and the horse just says no. It just isn't going to happen. Or the horse just walks over to the other end of the corral and just says, "I'm not playing."
yep,
And in many ways, that reflects our employees today, because it's so easy to walk to the other end of the corral. It's so easy to open up LinkedIn, and LinkedIn will gladly say, "Hey, if things aren't going well here are 20 other jobs that look fantastic for you." Now, we don't know if they are or not, but
yeah,
LinkedIn will tell you there's a whole other side of the corral that you can gravitate toward. And so um, and I know I want to be respectful of your time, so we've got to wrap up here. But it occurs to me, I had a leader say to me, "Oh my God," he said this. He said, "You know what we need? We need a good recession, because we need employees to be more grateful for their jobs. And if we could have a good recession where unemployment spikes, that'll create the gratitude that we need." And I took a breath, and there was clearly there was no point in having a conversation about that. So I just took a breath and I said, "Well, that is a point of view. Yeah, but I don't know that I would wish a great recession on us, so that you can have employees who'd be more grateful, because along with those grateful employees, you're going to have some other problems that come along with that great recession." So it may be that we just have to find new ways to draw employees to us, as opposed to
yeah.
driving them. So
It's a
Dan,
great way to build trust, right? Making that. So,
um, so once again, this is a great conversation, and I'm sure we will have more of these in the future. And what I really, really appreciate about this is, this is part of your journey and my journey, where we're kind of talking things through. We're figuring things out as we go. We don't have all of the answers. We have a lot of questions, a lot of observations, and a few of the answers. And I will make sure that for anyone who is interested in Red Paint Consulting, any of the experiential events that you guys sponsor, I'll make sure we include the links to you and to your organization's website in the show notes for this episode. And I would encourage anybody, whether you are on the East Coast or not, because you travel a lot. You go out and you do things not just in your local area. You create these experiences just about anywhere. So um, I would encourage anyone who's interested, just reach out and have the conversation with you. Any final words you'd like to share?
no, first of all, thank you for having me back on the podcast. It's an absolute pleasure. And like before, we could keep going for another 2 or 3 hours. So hopefully you will have me back again in the near future. Final words. Thank you for saying we do travel. We will design a program wherever you are. As I said, we will meet you where you are. And we have a lot of relationships with different outfitters and organizations for us to be able to build programs. And I would just encourage you to just learn more about it. Seeing is believing. If you want to just have a conversation about what a program may look like for you as an individual, if you're looking for coaching or for a team or for a leadership group, happy to at least just brainstorm and have that conversation with you and give you some ideas and thoughts to consider. And then do your due diligence and homework and look into what the value and impact it will have on your organization, yourself, and your leaders. And again, Dan, I appreciate the opportunity to have this conversation.